Yo, so back in the early 1960s, this dude Michael Rockefeller straight up vanished off the coast of Papua. His disappearance was like a huge deal in America, and the deets surrounding it? Totally wild, and it instantly had the whole world tripping. And for good reason, because Michael was, a Rockefeller. His fam was famous, and the mystery of how he disappeared, plus the crazy clues about what might have happened, made it international news. People had all sorts of theories. Some thought Michael totally ate it from exhaustion, trying to swim to shore. Others figured he got munched on by some animal, like a shark or a croc, while trying to get help. But the main theory? Locals offed him and, get this, ate him. Yeah, seriously. Are you digging history's grim bits, messed up crimes, and brainy mysteries? Hell yeah, you're home. Slap that subscribe button on Why Not Files so we can finally rake in enough views to drown ourselves in those massive, cheap-as-chips Panda Express family feasts. And finally get our damn hands on some orange chicken. So, let's dive into this whole Michael Rockefeller case. Michael was born on May 18th, 1938, into one of the richest and most powerful families on the planet. He was the fifth kid of Nelson, a businessman who also used to be the vice president of the U.S. The Rockefellers were a major force in America, even helping build up some big cities. And Michael wasn't just some random rich kid. His dad was a Republican politician, became governor of New York in '59, and later, VP under Gerald Ford from '74 to '77. But Michael, he wasn't all about that money and power life. He was way more into art, culture, and travel, especially checking out ancient art. His mom, Abby Aldrich Rockefeller, had even started a primitive art museum called the Museum of Modern Art, which totally blew Michael's mind when it opened. While everyone else was schmoozing, his dad was saying how this new museum was the first in the world dedicated to primitive art. He also made it clear that the fam didn't want to separate this art, but to, combine it with everything else, showing how much had been lost. Their goal? To pick out the most beautiful stuff, as good as anything in any other art museum, so everyone could dig it. When he was a kid, Michael went to the Buckley School in New York, and then Philip Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. After that, his dad was all, gotta go to college. So Michael went to Harvard, the most prestigious place ever. He studied history and economics, and while he was there, he joined a Harvard expedition to study the Dani tribe in Papua. That's where his adventurous side started to show. As he was finishing up college, he was kind of torn. His dad was hoping he'd follow in his footsteps and go into banking or finance. But Michael graduated with a BA in history and economics and was like, nah. He'd traveled a bunch, worked on his dad's ranch in Venezuela, visited Japan in '57, and was surrounded by art, especially primitive art. He seemed to want to make his dad proud, but in his own way, by going to the source of the art his dad collected and going deeper than his dad ever could. In 1961, a filmmaker from Harvard, Robert Gardner, was working on a documentary about a Stone Age culture in New Guinea that was always at war. It was called Dead Birds, and Michael was the sound guy. This was Michael's first taste of the life he wanted, exploring and finding pure art. Gardner said Michael joined the project because he wanted to do something totally new and bring a huge collection back to New York. Before they left, Michael had been talking to this Dutch museum dude, Adrian Gebrans, who was doing fieldwork in Asmat. Asmat was known for people who were hunters and collectors, but who also made super beautiful carvings. For Michael, Asmat was the obvious choice to make his dreams a reality. He was down to go anywhere, having already spent months in Japan and Venezuela, but he wanted to go somewhere off the beaten path, a place rarely seen. Even though he was adventurous, Michael wasn't going solo. Besides being a Rockefeller, he was also a trustee of his family's art museum. His crew included experienced people like Gebrans and René Singh, a government anthropologist. Michael's notes from his first trip to Asmat show how serious he was about his goals. He and the team launched an expedition to meet the Asmat tribe, hoping to find art for the museum. And it worked! Michael was stoked and determined to get his hands on some of their cultural artifacts. In his letters, he called the Asmat tribe a puzzle to be solved. He thought Asmat was perfect, with everything he could possibly need. It was loaded with seafood, wild pigs, hairy couscous, like opossums, and cassowaries, like ostriches. Sago palms provided starch, and Capricorn beetle larvae were a major food source. The rivers were like highways, and 15-foot crocs roamed around. Jet-black iguanas chilled on fallen trees. The Asmat region was super unique, far from everything, and hard to get to. Even though there's air transport now, back then, getting anywhere from Asmat was a long journey by river and sea. 50 years ago, there were no wheels, no steel, no paper, no roads, no cars. In this huge area, there was only one airstrip, and outside the main town, no cell service. It was hard to tell where the water ended and the land began, because the Arafura Sea flooded the coast. The Asmat had very little contact with the outside world, and saw white people as some kind of scary spirit creatures. On Michael's first trip, everything went smoothly. He was blown away by the life and art of the Asmat. In many ways, their world was the opposite of the Western world. In some areas, men had sex with each other, shared wives in rituals, and sometimes drank each other's pee. They killed their neighbors and, ate human flesh. But they were also incredible artists, carving wood in a land without stones. They made shields, drum paddles, canoes, and ancestral sticks called biz, which symbolized spirits. The biz sticks were like 20-foot-tall masterpieces of stacked humans, crocodiles, praying mantises, and head-hunting symbols. They were haunting expressions of life, and each one carried the name of an ancestor. The carvings were memorials to the dead and reminders to the living that they weren't forgotten. After his first trip, Michael went back to New Guinea for his own expedition. He was curious about Omade's village, one of the biggest Asmat communities. His first trip had been welcomed at first, but it didn't last. The locals put up with the photo crew, but they wouldn't let the white researchers buy any artifacts. These carvings were part of their rituals and religion. But Michael really wanted to bring some Asmat stuff back to New York. He felt like the outside world should see it, but the Asmat people didn't seem to get his important cultural mission. Since he hadn't prepared properly, Michael had to give up and go home empty-handed, only bringing back knowledge about the tribes, their culture, and their head-hunting traditions. But Michael didn't give up. He planned a second trip, wanting to do a detailed study of Asmat, and put on a huge exhibition at his dad's museum. He returned to Asmat in October 1961, when he was just 23. He brought René Wassing and 2 Asmat teenagers. They visited 13 villages over 3 weeks, trading for spears, axes, cloth, tobacco, drums, trumpets, and shields. Michael was especially impressed with the bis sticks, calling them one of the types of objects that I think cannot be disputed because of the interference of Western commercialism in the art of asthma. But this art collecting trip soon turned tragic. Michael collected a ton of stuff, piling it up in drums, bowls, horns, bamboo spears, and shields. In South Omade's village, he bought a set of 4 objects that are now in the Rockefeller wing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. On November 17, 1961, Michael, René, and the Asmat teens headed back to Agats for supplies. They planned to follow the coast towards South Asmat, a wild and undeveloped area. They wanted to meet a priest named Cornelius van Kessel. As they crossed the mouth of the Bits River, which was 20 kilometers wide, the tides and winds caused the water to go from calm to crazy, turbulent, in a minute. Waves swamped their 12-meter-long canoe. The Asmat kids, who were the guides, and Michael, who knew rivers, jumped out. The kids swam to the edge to get help. After a tough journey through the mud, they got help that night. The Dutch governor, Peter Platel, sent out a rescue team with ships, planes, and helicopters, along with sailors and police. The Australian and Dutch governments searched the coastline. Even President John F. Kennedy sent a telegram offering help. The American government, through the 7th Fleet, offered planes and cargo ships, While the search was happening, Michael and Renee spent the night holding onto the overturned boat. The next morning, November 19th, 1961, Michael, afraid of being swept further out, decided to swim to shore, about 4 to 10 kilometers away. He stripped down to his underwear, tied 2 empty 18-liter jerry cans to his waist for flotation, and started swimming. That was the last time anyone saw him. Renee was spotted from the air that afternoon and rescued the next morning. A huge search for Michael began. His dad, stepmom, and twin brother went to the Asmat Islands. The Dutch government searched again with helicopters and boats, using thousands of locals to scour the beaches and swamps. Nelson and Mary Rockefeller chartered a Boeing 707, filling it with journalists. The Rockefellers were rich and willing to spend a ton of money to find Michael, but it didn't help. After 2 weeks, on November 24th, 1961, the Dutch Minister of the Interior told the New York Times that there was no hope of finding Michael alive, and they stopped the search. In 1964, Michael was declared dead, the cause being drowning. Even though drowning was the official cause, Michael's disappearance became a media sensation. Rumors and theories spread like crazy. Some thought he was kidnapped, some thought he went native and hid in the jungle, others thought he was eaten by sharks or crocs. Still others thought he made it to shore but was killed and eaten by local Asmat headhunters, or that he just drowned. The Dutch denied all the rumors, saying they couldn't figure out what happened. Officially, he just disappeared. But the stories about his disappearance took on a life of their own and became myths, and the truth is still unclear. Michael's story inspired Broadway plays, novels, rock songs, and even a TV show in the 1980s. In 1969, a journalist named Milt Macklin went to Omades village and found a possible motive for murder. He heard about a massacre of Asmat leaders by Dutch officers in 1958. The Asmat believed in balance, and revenge could prevent evil spirits. They were bloodthirsty warriors but had never killed a white man before. Milt Macklin suspected that after Rockefeller reached the coast, the Asmat tribe killed him. His investigation became a book called The Search for Michael. Decades later, anthropologist Tobias Schneebaum claimed villagers in Asmat said they ate Rockefeller. And way back in December 1961, a Dutch priest named Van Piper, who had spent years in Asmat and knew the people and language, said Michael was indeed killed by the Asmat for revenge. This was different from the Dutch investigation, and there was a reason why the Dutch hid the real cause of death. In 1962, the Dutch had lost half of Papua Island to Indonesia. They were afraid that if the truth about Michael's death came out, they'd be accused of not controlling the natives, and their government would be overthrown. This was supported by a secret telegram from the governor of New Guinea to the Dutch Minister of the Interior, which mentioned what the priests had reported. These priests had lived in Asmat for years, spoke the language, and were convinced their story was accurate. One priest even wanted to go to the US to tell Michael's family, but church authorities warned them to keep quiet, so the mission wouldn't lose support, and sent one of the priests back to the Netherlands. In 2014, a National Geographic reporter, Carl Hoffman, revealed in his book Savage Harvest, A Tale of Cannibals, Colonialism, and Michael Rockefeller's tragic quest for primitive art, that Dutch studies pointed to the Asmat killing Michael. Hoffman's reporting is considered the most accurate. He pieced together facts from reports, cables, letters, missionary accounts, and Catholic Church records, most of which were never published. He then went to Omades village where Michael disappeared, posing as a journalist. His translator heard a man telling others not to talk about the dead American tourist. The translator learned it was an open secret that the Asmat had killed a white man, and it shouldn't be mentioned for fear of retaliation. In 1958, 3 years before Michael's first visit, there was a clash between 2 Asmat tribes. The Dutch, who had just taken control, tried to stop the violence. But a misunderstanding led to the Dutch opening fire on the Asmat, killing 4 of their war leaders. This led the Asmat to attack Michael when he came ashore. According to the Dutch missionary who heard the story, the Asmat initially thought Michael was a crocodile, but when he got closer, they saw he was a white man, like the Dutch colonists. Unluckily for Michael, he met the new war leaders and the children of those killed by the Dutch. One of them reportedly said, "Asmat people, you always talk about revenge, and this is your chance." Though hesitant, they eventually stabbed and killed Michael. Then they dismembered and consumed him. His thigh bone was fashioned into a dagger, while his shin bone became the tip of a spear. They severed his genitals to be eaten among the Asmat tribesmen and split his skull in two. They washed themselves with his blood during a ritual dance. The Asmat believed they were restoring balance. The white men had killed 4 of them, and now they had revenge by eating Michael. They believed they could absorb his energy and power. But the Asmat's happiness didn't last long. When the search for Michael began, and they saw planes and helicopters, they were terrified, thinking it was retaliation. Plus, a terrible cholera outbreak hit their area, which they also saw as part of the white men's revenge. Many Asmat people told this story to Hoffman, but none claimed responsibility. They just said it was a story they heard. Then one day, Hoffman saw a man acting out the murder as part of a story he was telling. The man pretended to spear someone, shoot an arrow, and cut off a head. Hoffman tried to record their conversation, but it ended too soon. But he did record the end, which, when translated, meant, "Don't tell this story to other men or other villages. This story is only for us. Don't talk, and keep this story for us. I hope this is for you, and only you. Don't talk to anyone else. If people ask, don't answer. This story is only for you. If you tell it, you will die. I'm afraid you will die. Your people will die. Keep this story in your house, for you alone forever." All right, bestie, time to peace out for now, you magnificent bastard. Hope you dug that shit. If you did, toss a like my way, and maybe even stick around for more of this glorious nonsense. Don't be a stranger, and I'll catch your beautiful face in the next one. Cheers, you legends.